Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Rise. I'm your host, Bridget Howard. Today's guest is none other than the K-State Senior Director of Broadcast Services, aka the GOAT of Manhattan, Kansas, Brian Smoller. Brian, I am absolutely thrilled to have you on the podcast today.
Not as thrilled as I am to be on here with you. Just seeing where your career has gone since you've been with us here at K-State has been remarkable. It's inspiring. It's a very proud moment to be on here. I'm very honored.
Well, I'm so excited to get to chat with you today because you have played such a big role in the careers of broadcasters that have come through K-State, and the advice you gave me and the wisdom that you have from all your years in broadcasting. I had to share that with the listeners here today because I think it will do wonders for them. So let's start with your college days and go back and how you got into broadcasting. Did you always know that broadcasting was the career that you wanted to pursue?
No, it wasn't at all. And in fact, this is one thing I always tell young aspiring broadcasters when they get to that moment where they decide, hey, this is something I would like to do or think about it. And that every path is different. Every path to the top or whatever you esteem to be the top is different. And for me, it was not at all. I now looking back on it, I think I was always destined to do this. But growing up as a young kid outside Topeka, that was not at all what I thought of at all. Went to college first on a music scholarship, to be quite blunt, and was completely in another world from sports. Always liked sports, always liked being around it, but never thought about it as a career. But it was a moment of getting halfway through college, kind of figuring out that music was not what I wanted to do full time, and deciding what I wanted to do. And sports broadcasting seemed like something that I was kind of interested in. I had a family friend that we went to church with, and Mitch Holthus, who was the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, and he was at Kansas State at the time, and got started. Followed. Hey, I'll just go to K-State because that's where he went. My brother had just started attending there and got involved in doing it. But looking back as a young kid, this is when my brother and I, we grew up outside of Topeka, and we were big sports nuts and always played out in the yard. We had a huge yard, and we'd mow base paths for baseball and mowed a football field and drew lines and all that sort of stuff. And whenever we played sports, basketball, football, whatever, I was always the commentator. And I always did play-by-play or told the story of the game of us playing, and usually warped the story to fit my own objectives, right? As a kid. And I did that all the way as a growing up. And then I would entertain my friends. I was a line cook at a restaurant in Topeka. And I would entertain my coworkers by jumping on the microphone that we would call back the orders. And I would do pretend play-by-play baseball games using all of the people that were in the kitchen as the baseball players themselves. And I would just make them laugh because I would talk about somebody striking out and describe how it was just an awful plate appearance. Or someone's got an unbelievable fastball, and just was having fun. But it was doing those that people would say, man, you should really look into doing some sportscasting. And I thought, really? And it's just I'm just messing around. And anyway, so yeah, I guess in hindsight, I was always kind of destined to do it, but never really thought about it until I got into college.
So you had some untraditional experiences with broadcasting, so to say. But in college, what were the experiences that you got that kind of got you prepared for your career after college?
Well, once I got to K-State, the experiences of working at the college radio station and being able to do play-by-play and do games was the way that I got started. And I was also, at the time, working part-time for the local AM radio station here in Manhattan. And got some experience doing games, but also tutored underneath an experienced sportscaster, Matt Walters, who was my supervisor at the time. And because of the experience that I was able to get with the college student radio station and with K-Man, I got a lot of games under my belt during that early part of time. And then I also had some great mentors like Greg Sharp, who was the voice of the Wildcats at the time and now is at Nebraska. And he's still one of my mentors and someone that I talk to quite often about broadcasting in general. Mitch Holthus was there as well. And then, of course, Matt. And we were pretty blessed at that time coming through K-State that we had a lot of people that were extremely talented around us. Brent Stover was a peer of mine at the radio station, and Brent now works for CBS Sports as a broadcaster. And Brent and I both, we took on as much as we possibly could in college, trying to do as many games as we possibly could. We did play-by-play for volleyball, which had never been done before. We were doing coaches shows for those sports. And baseball, I was doing a Mike Clark baseball show at Rusty's Last Chance, for those that remember, in Aggieville, with like 3 people. And I was dressed in a full 3-piece suit because I didn't know any better. I was, 19 years old. And but we were just doing whatever we could, just trying to get reps, basically. And it was great. It was exhaustive. It was a lot of work, but I never forgot the experiences that there was nothing that could replace doing the games and doing the job. And so when we got to this point where I'm at now, that was quite important for me to give back, to make sure that if we were going to have students come through and work for us, that we needed to give them games. We needed to give them opportunities to be able to broadcast. It wasn't just going to be, hey, we're just going to give you a one-off here and there. You had to cut your teeth by doing a lot.
A lot of those experiences translated pretty seamlessly to what you're doing now. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But why is radio so important?
Well, for me, it was the storytelling part of radio. That was what got me to, I think, appreciate the medium a lot more. And I think it really helps serve as a good base for people, because you really have to learn how to tell the story. You can't use just your face. You can't point to things. You can't just not talk. And you have to be descriptive. You have to learn how to be concise, but yet describe what you're seeing. And as a sideline reporter or at anything other job, in any part of broadcasting, you're often telling a story. You're describing what you're seeing, and you have to do it concisely. I know you've had other people on this podcast in the past, and Jesse Kurtz out Mountain West, he had those summing up so succinctly and so brilliantly with his different words that he uses and gives his advice. And I think that's so expertly said. And being concise is something that I struggled with when I was younger, and have still learned how to try and run down words and answers. But being concise was something you had to learn very quickly on the radio. And I think being able to do many different sports helped also grow a love for all those different sports, helped me learn about those sports, which, knowing your content, knowing your game, knowing what you're covering, those all led to being able to do the other things successfully, which is do television, be able to pass on tools to other people.
You currently serve as the Senior Director of Broadcast Services at K-State. What does that role entail? For those that don't know, because I even work for you and I still am a little unclear.
It's a lot of things. So our video department runs a lot of different stuff. We have the video boards, of course, that are run in stadium. We have certain shows that run for those games that are combined with our marketing department about what we're going to try and do in stadium to help excite the fans and keep the players and coaches engaged and that sort of thing. So it's meeting with the teams, meeting with what the respective staffs want out of each game. There's that arm. We have coaches, shows, and other television programs that we try and put together that are for the fans, but also for recruiting. And there are also recruiting videos that we put together that are behind the scenes that are probably for recruits when they come in, and it's stuff that we are allowed to show, be at compliance, those sort of things. And then you have the public-facing side, which is K-State HDTV, which started as a streaming entity for us, where we were doing TV production of just 20 events a year. Now we're doing close to 100 events a year, and we're putting them on all sorts of different platforms for ESPN with our conference deal with ESPN. So it's grown and morphed into a lot of different roles. And then on top of all that, I have the broadcasting side, which I still do, and do radio for a number of our different sports, and then TV for a lot of our sports. And I enjoy it. I enjoy doing all those different hats. We have an incredible staff. And I would say that none of that is possible without the unbelievable talent that we have at K-State. We've got a lot of Kansas State grads. I think that's important for us, is that you definitely have to have if you're in college athletics and working, everybody knows this, you have to have a love for it, because you're going to pull down some really long hours. And you got to be around people you like to work with. And we all enjoy being around each other. We give each other a hard time. We like to have fun. We also work pretty hard together. And Andy Leach, Preston Kerner, Cody Eastern, Dakota German when he was there, Jay Moline, the rest of our staff. We have a great time. We work hard, and all about trying to do what's best for the college student athletes and the students that come through our doors and help us out.
K-State is not a small school by any means, but it's not mainly known for broadcasting like Mizzou, Syracuse, or Oklahoma. So What do you think are the benefits of maybe going to a smaller school, so to say, that have those programs like K-State HD TV and getting your career started off that way?
Well, I think it would really depend on the school you're going to. Now, there are some programs out there that do an unbelievable job, and I don't want to even start naming them because I run into trouble without naming them. But for example, Ball State is one that is an incredible producer of content, of video and audio content, and have rolled through tremendous amount of great stuff. And when we first launched K-State HDTV, I remember looking at a lot of Ball State stuff, just seeing how they put together their broadcast entity. It was mostly collegiately run by their students. I think in the Big 12, we have a unique sort of balance of being able to produce stuff for high-level ESPN shows, but also doing stuff that's just our own on Big 12 Bound, ESPN Plus. It's a little bit of a unique partnership that every school has its own third-tier network, so to speak, or third-tier production house that's all being folded into the conference. I think it's allowed us to give more opportunities to students than others. Because we got a little bit of a head start on all the other schools in the Big 12. So that's where I say it's kind of specific. You want to make sure that someone that has a commitment to making sure that they're not just a learning lab for students, but also trying to do it professionally. So I think when we started, we really put an emphasis on, hey, let's make the product really good, and then we'll backfill it and then worry about distribution later. So we really focused on teaching up our students, making sure we had a core group, and then graduating and then filling in behind them with the freshmen and the sophomores that came behind them that learned from those other fellow students. And once we got that started, then we worried about distribution and seeing where we could land on platforms. And I think it's really put us in a good position where we've been able to have every year, it seems like we're just raising the bar on people that we've come in and helped in our office, helped us direct shows, students that are running our shows and running cameras and running EVS or graphics or anything else. And then people like yourself that come in and have an ability to be on air and learn very fast. And you're not just doing, little side gigs here and there of a volleyball broadcast that's buried somewhere against Texas Southern. No, you're doing a men's basketball broadcast that's seen by hundreds of thousands of people. You're doing a football show that's going to be seen by hundreds of thousands of people prior to a football game. So we're trying to do our best to give students their best opportunity, but they have to earn it. We're not just handing out positions here just based on somebody walking in the door saying they want to do it.
I think it is so important for a program like K-State HD to give those opportunities and like you said, not give, but earn those opportunities, but also get that hands-on experience to experience all the different roles. To have all that experience was so beneficial to me because then when you're in front of the camera, you understand all the different roles that are going on behind the scenes. And I know that that's something we talk about a lot on the podcast because you're way more understanding when you know what's going on behind the camera, and it's just helpful to know.
I think that's an important lesson that needs to be learned by a lot of people. And usually you don't see that everywhere, Bridget, is if people get started in the business and they don't have a full knowledge of what it takes to do other things. And we try to do that as much as we can. And we talk a lot about, hey, make yourself well-rounded, make yourself a multi-purpose tool that's going to be able to go in there and do a lot of things for people. And the more you know, and even if it's something you do it once and you're like, boy, I hate this. I never want to do cable pulling again, or I never want to run shading again. All those type of things. Those are all important lessons to learn because then you respect the people that do those jobs and understand that they're putting in the time and the effort to make you look good when you're on camera or other things. And so that's an important lesson to learn.
Let's take a moment to talk about Sage, our sponsor for Season 2 of The Rise. For many of us who are on air, finding pieces that are both stylish and affordable are sometimes hard to come by. This season, The Rise is sponsored by Sage, an online boutique that is dedicated to helping women find looks that help you accomplish your life goals while feeling confident and looking great. Use the code THERISE20 for 20% off your next purchase at shopsage.com, and make sure to follow @ShopSage on Instagram for updates on new arrivals and more. What advice do you have for listeners who are in high school, college, or even beyond college about putting your best foot forward and getting those early on-air opportunities?
Well, get involved, and there's no easy way to do that other than you just have to throw yourself in there. And I think it's a lot of it is you start out at the bottom. When I started at doing radio, I was doing a Saturday morning swap shop show, which is it's basically a garage sale on radio. And that's what I did for Saturday mornings. And it was terrible. I'm just going to tell you, it was awful. And covering city commission meetings and the like. And you did it because you knew it was the start. Now, not everybody's going to do that. Not everyone has to start at the bottom. Some people are lucky enough that they get to go and start at a pretty high level place. And that there's nothing wrong with that. Don't measure yourself by what someone else is doing. When you're a broadcaster, it is very easy to fall into the trap of watching on TV and you're like, I'm way better than that person, or that person's way better than me. I have no business being in this business. All those thoughts are 100% normal, and they go through every single one of us minds when we watch something or do something. And the first thing I always tell people is, please do not compare yourself to someone else. You're your own person. You have your own talents. And we try very hard at K-State to discover what those talents are, put you in your best spot to succeed. And usually when we have our tryouts, we're looking for somebody that comes in, is willing to work hard, willing to listen to criticism and take it and be able to improve and get better, and then want to do the job and want to get better. And those are important traits. I really don't, especially for me, when I start to evaluate people that are going to work for us, I don't look as much at, are they pretty enough to be on camera? Are they, do they have the right hair? Do they have the right clothes? None of that matters, because all that stuff can be done later. The other stuff, the substance, is what makes somebody really good. And we're lucky. We had you. That set a very high bar. We've had some really good ones here. The two that we have right now, the two KBs, Kelsey Bigelow and Catherine Benhart, are fantastic. They've picked the bar up where you have set it pretty high. They've done a great job of running with it. And but they're setting the bar high for the next group, right, to come in and do the same thing. So pretty exciting. But those are the things that we look for. And if you're young and you're looking to get into it, nothing replaces hard work. Nothing replaces knowing the games, knowing the teams, knowing the sports. Well, verse yourself in a lot of different sports. There are a lot of free programs that are out there. Learn how to edit, get in there and learn how to write, those type of things. You've heard these things from many others, I'm sure, but the writing and editing are stuff you can do at any moment and on any free program that's out there, even iMovie. The sooner you get to working on that and cutting up your own stuff and learning how you look on camera and how to read and how people talk to the camera and all those are all things that can help you down the road.
You got your start in radio and eventually made your way to broadcasting in front of the camera. What was that learning curve like for you? Because they are two very different roles.
I had to learn how to smile when talking. That was the big thing. Was you're on radio, you don't have to worry about your facial expression. And I remember one of the first times that I started doing television, the producer that I had, his name was Alan Flowers, and he now works for the NFL Network. And Alan was always in my ear. He did all of the Fox Sports Midwest games, and I was doing TV, and he would just be in my ear the whole time. So I need to see those teeth. Because I had a bad habit, and still do to this day. When I smile, I kind of pull my lip down over my teeth. And I had to go practice in the mirror how to smile when I was on the air, when I was doing games. So that has been a big thing for me, was to smile and look like you're having fun when you're doing a broadcast. And that was one thing that you never thought about it before, but it was a big transition. And then the other thing people would tell you is when you're doing a game or broadcasting, is having a producer talk in your ear. Those are that's something that's different that may throw you off when you're trying to do stuff. But, radio gives you a great medium to ad-lib. And so once you have that background of ad-libbing, it becomes a lot easier to be able to just extempore, just be able to talk on whatever you wanted at any time and maybe BS your way through through something if somebody's in your ear messing you up.
Well, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but the experience of you doing, the coaches shows and hosting K-State Gameday, those really translated into what you're doing now at K-State. What do you think is the key to being a good host? Well,
you're right. Those are different skill sets than play-by-play. Being a host, it's intros and outros. Those are the keys, because the rest of it's pretty easy. The rest of the time, you usually have an analyst, you have someone else that's on the show with you, and you're throwing it to them, and you're letting them do the heavy lifting. You're just trying to make sure that the asylum doesn't get too out of control. When we do those shows, and you were part of those, when we had Ian Campbell and Reggie Walker, two really good friends, that former football players at K-State, NFL guys, you never knew what was where we were going on the show. Those two guys together, they had most opportunities to run off the rails pretty fast. So it was trying to keep them on track, make sure that we were hitting the stories that we needed to. But then it was also trying to think about what we were going to say going in and out of breaks. And I think what differentiates a good host from a bad host is being able to not come up with some, crazy, corny joke going in and out of breaks. That's not what I'm talking about. Having transitions to understand how a show flows. Understand this is the biggest story we got to get to. Here's how we get to it. Here's how we get out of it. Here's how we're going to get to the next subject line. And being able to craft that in your head and have it kind of mapped out, at least ahead of time, is a good way to do it. And then you don't have to write stuff down necessarily, but just have an idea of where you're going to go with each story. That's what makes a good host, in my opinion. And I'm a big believer in bullet points. Just from more than anything, if you write it down, so if you're typing it out on a computer or if you're writing it handwritten on a bullet point on a card, it's a memory trick, right? As you write it, you're going to remember that. And you may not even have to look at that again. On the K-State game day, I hardly ever look at our script once we're in the show, but because I just remember it from writing it. Now, not everybody's going to have that, but for the most part, you remember your own stuff when you write it. And so when you hammer home your topics and you hammer home your own stories, you can kind of have that written down. Now, I might write down a couple stats or two that I know if we're going to go to a graphic or if we're going to go to a full screen shot of something and I specifically want to be accurate in what I'm saying, I'll have that written down. But for the most part, the rest of it is I wrote it ahead of time. I kind of know an idea of where I want to go. And so it's a matter of just remembering those things, talking to those guys, staying calm, not getting lost in the moment, not getting to the, oh no, I'm doing a show and your mind wanders a little bit. I call it going off the rails. Once that train gets off the rails, it's hard to get it back on. You got to just stay in the moment, stay calm, which is easier said than done. Only comes with experience and doing it more than once. I'm sure you felt the same when you hosted K-State Game Day your first time. It probably was just like bullets are flying. You're like, what? It's like trying to take a sip off the fire hydrant. And then once you start doing a couple more shows, and it becomes a whole lot easier.
If any of our listeners are interested in, getting a hosting job or trying it out for experience, what would you say is the best way to get practice doing that? Because it is hard with play-by-play and hosting to get that experience unless you're really thrown into that situation.
You're right. It's very difficult, and especially the play-by-play side of it, because radio and TV play-by-play jobs are so sought after. They're very difficult to find and get. So the best way to prepare for those is, it sounds crazy, but the way I started before I got to college was to watch games on television. I would turn it down to mute. I had the rosters in front of me. I did my work. I did my chart work. You can download spotting charts and figure those out. And other broadcasters usually are pretty willing to give you a copy of their spotting charts, maybe an old one, kind of give you an idea of what they look like. And then you do a game and you sit there and you broadcast the game. You tape yourself. And then you don't listen to it right away. You want to listen to an older broadcast from a few weeks back, so you don't quite remember everything that happened. Exactly. You're trying to listen back to hear how you described it. Did you describe it accurately? Am I getting a picture painted in my head? Those type of things. When you watch television and watch a television broadcaster, you're trying to see how do they transition? How do they set up their analyst? Are they making themselves look smart? Are they saying I all the time when they broadcast a game? Or are they saying we, us, trying to talk about the team as a general? Are they giving credit to their other people behind the camera? Are they talking about cameramen and camerawomen that are running the show? Those are all important things to pick up on. And then as far as hosting a show, I think doing what you're doing, doing podcasts. I mean, we're in a world now where technology allows us to do all sorts of crazy stuff and stuff that would never have been thought of when I was coming out of college. You had to actually be in a radio station. You had to be actually in a television station to do the things that we're doing right now. Now you can do them from your own home. You can do it with your phone, and you can do really great content. So those are all tools that you have at your disposal. You're able to go out and use any way you want. If you're trying to get started hosting a show, start hosting a show. That's what YouTube is for. And that's what a podcast is for. And you'll get the feedback. You'll get it one way or the other. You're going to get the feedback of whether you're doing a good job or not. Seek out the people that you want as advice to watch your stuff, make you better, and then take it with a grain of salt. Hey, this is my style. This is what I want to do. Okay, I'm going to take that advice. I'm going to use it and get better. Not everybody has great advice. It's you have to learn how to pick and choose that stuff. And some of it, you have to make it your own. Some of it's going to be worth re-examining what you're doing, saying, yeah, they might have a point there. So I would say take it all in as much as you can, use what you have at your disposal, and go out there and try and do as much as you can as well. And I think you're doing a great job right here with this podcast of giving people a great example of what they can do. Just trying to make, get out there and get experience of hosting shows.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's fun to be able to create your own content, I think. And nowadays, like I have said so many times on this podcast, there's no excuse for saying, oh, I don't have this experience, because it's at your fingertips. You can do it on your phone, like you said. So I think that advice is fantastic. And to all of my listeners listening, take note, because Brian knows his stuff. And I think that's some really good advice. So to round this episode out, we are going to go to our last segment called Quick Hits, just a couple questions to get to know you outside of broadcasting. You ready for this?
All right, I'm ready.
First question, what is the most memorable call you've had doing play-by-play?
Oh, man. There have been so many. Clearly, the championships. Well, this is how you know you're getting old. It's right. Is that you start thinking back to the ones that you missed, as opposed to like the calls that you messed up. Those are the ones that come to mind right away. Are the memorable calls. Like, oh man, I could have said something so much better there. Obviously, the championship games that where K-State won a Big 12 title that I was able to do radio or TV for are just. They're at the very top. There are some exciting wins where you're just losing your mind and going crazy. I can remember vividly my first ever men's basketball game that I ever did on radio as a memorable game. I can remember my first football game doing student radio, clear as day. I can remember the very first game I ever did play-by-play for, which was a junior high Manhattan High girls basketball game, and I thought I did a great job. And after the first half ended, I got a phone call from the radio station manager. He said, "Hey, you're doing great." I said, "Thanks." He goes, "You haven't said the score the entirety of this first half." I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll probably need to do that in the second half. Here, I thought I was doing a great job, but never once said the score. So the most memorable ones, I guess, are the ones that you get to the point where the big wins are always there. But the ones that you mess up seem to stick in your craw a little bit more than others.
I would agree with that, for sure. Question number 2, what is your favorite travel destination?
Oh, man. So, well, I can tell you what the worst is.
Right.
No, now that I said that, I don't know if I should. Oh, I'll say it. I'll walk down the road.
Yeah.
All right. The best ones are clearly the ones where you go on, the best ones are the ones where you go with the team. We just came off of one where K-State baseball was down in Oklahoma City, where, everyone's kind of expecting you to go there and maybe make a dent, maybe not, but you go there and you end up staying a lot longer and you have and it's just you against the world. Right. And you feel like you're part of the team and you're part of that experience. So this last week, K-State was down, or a couple of weeks ago, they were down in Oklahoma City for the baseball Big 12 championship. And they spent the whole week just winning games. And to see everybody capture that passion and see the guys just keep winning games, and you're part of that, and it's just you against everybody, is so much fun. And that's why you do play-by-play, is to get that experience. The least favorite. We went to Laramie, Wyoming, and I've been there a couple of different times. And
Don't say this, because I wanted to go there with the Mountain West, really.
God bless Laramie, Wyoming, and everyone in Wyoming. But we got stuck in Laramie, Wyoming once, where it snowed and it snowed and it snowed, and we got snowed in, and they wouldn't let us leave the airport. They said they didn't have de-icer, and they said the reason they didn't have de-icer, I asked, how could you not have de-icer? We live in Laramie. You're here in Laramie, Wyoming. I mean, it's cold. He said, no. Well, we do have de-icer, but the hose, the nozzle of the hose is broken to spray the plane. I said, we can't go to Home Depot and buy a nozzle for the hose? No, that's not how it works. All right. So the next day we had to bus home from Laramie, Wyoming, which is like a 15-hour bus ride through the snow, through this was back in the day, Bridget. So we had a DVD, and the only DVD we had was the Notebook.
What team was this with?
This was with women's basketball.
Okay.
And the only movie we had to watch on this 15-hour bus ride was The Notebook. Great movie. Extended version. And so it was a rough trip back home. So let me just tell you. Anyway.
So you'll probably never watch that movie again.
I will never watch that movie. Now, I've been to Wyoming since and have loved it. I've been to Yellowstone. It's one of my favorite places in the whole world. Laramie, Wyoming, though, if it comes up, it's one of those quick moments where you're like, oh, it sends a shiver down my spine because we were there and it was so bitterly cold and we were snowed in. But yes, it's been colder other places, but that's the one that sticks out. But yes, I will soften my criticism of Laramie because of my respect for you and Jesse and the great fine folks of the Mountain West.
That's a bucket list place that I have been told I have to go to. So yeah. Question number 4. Do you have any hidden talents?
I don't know. I don't know about hidden talents. I play the guitar. I play the piano.
It's 2 right there.
I played trumpet. That was what I went to school on. Scholarship, full ride scholarship to Washburn in Topeka on a trumpet scholarship. I haven't played the trumpet in some time, but so yeah, I would say music, I guess, would be my hidden. I don't know if it's hidden talent. I don't really do it a whole lot. The guys at work like to give me a hard time on another one, which is that one job that I held before I got into sportscasting is I worked on a dude ranch in Colorado as a wrangler, as a cowboy for a summer. So there you go.
The fact that this is the first time I'm ever hearing of this.
Yeah,
wow.
we led rides, led people on rides through the mountains, and did a rodeo every Sunday. I rode the barrels and not well, and did saddle a bareback tag, bareback bronc bustering, and oh yeah, the whole 9 yards, whole cowboyed up. So it was a fun and great summer, but I'm not sure that's something that I've necessarily cut out to do. But
you can tell, like, I'm just shocked right now. that might be the best thing I've heard all day today. Last question for you. What would you consider a hidden gem of Manhattan, Kansas?
Oh man. This would take too long to answer. Okay. Well, first of all, Manhattan in itself is a true hidden gem in the Big 12. It is a great college town. It's a great place to raise a family. It's a great place to experience college because it's small enough that you have that sort of family atmosphere that we're famous for, but it's also big enough that it has some big city vibes. So you have the downtown area where you can go and get a great meal, and you have Aggieville, which is turning into a great district, and not just for the bar scene, but for other things beyond, with just great food. So I would say the hidden gems are the local restaurants here. I think you have some great eating options. And if you're into that sort of local joints that just have great food, there's some great places like Coco Bolo's, So Long Saloon, of course, the Chef for breakfast. There's there's too long of a list to get to. Bourbon and Baker downtown, a lot of great local joints. And of course, there's the Little Grill, which is the Jamaican place. It's just north of town. It's a guy from Jamaica that makes chicken unlike anything you've seen in this world. And Pete Hughes' daughter plays music on Saturday nights. So you can't beat any of that stuff here inside the Little Apple.
That's awesome. Well, I'm kind of shocked you didn't say Kites, because that's my person's favorite. Their curly fries are to die for. But Brian, thank you so much for coming on the rides today. This was such a full circle moment for me, and I'm just so grateful for your time and your advice. So thank you again for coming on.